And I don't know if everybody's got an agenda, but the first thing on the agenda is school board policy impacting building fob access for board members. We have two policies. Policy 9150, which deals with, let me see, 9150 I thought was the most important of the two. Hmm? So, I just sort of want to begin here with saying that before we get into like clauses and commas, I think before we touch any policy, we have to know what the intent is here. I mean, I know the motion passed 5-2 to issue fobs to all school board members on condition of, you know, being cleared by a background check. But there was never any discussion at that point of what the purpose of doing so was and what the intent was and how it would be applied. And it seems to me that in policy 7440, it only says the board singular can act, you know, can determine, you know, these sorts of things. Not just determine, but you know, there's nothing in either of the policies that apply to distinct and separate individual board members. So that may be one of the things that you want to change. But the fact is I think that before we can do policy, we have to do motive. We have to do intention here. I mean, why are we wanting to amend these policies? For what reasons? For what, you know, for what cause? So I was the negative vote on the granting, you know, the distribution of fobs. So I have no idea what's on your mind in terms of why we're doing this.
Here, I just want to say something. Whether you're the negative vote or not is irrelevant right now. But we've gone through it in the past. Our intentions to modify the policies was to make sure that the board was included in the policy to make sure that that there's accountability for those spots. And that's what we're doing.
What are we doing?
To make sure that there's accountability for us with those fobs, because I believe the fob does not include the board within our policy. You know what I'm saying? The board is not included within the fobs policy or the key access policy.
Well, there is no fobs policy, but there is an access policy.
Access policy, that's what I said, right? So, to make sure that we were included in on that and to, make sure that we had accountability.
No, but as what? Included in on that as what? Because we're under the policy now. You know, the condition for visitors being there is determined by the school principal. And I guess the overall policy is determined by the board.
Okay, right.
So, to explain more, man, I just don't understand.
I think that was the whole intention for us to look at the policy, was to have a policy either ours either amended or adapt a new one for the board, or whatever it may be, or whoever chooses to use that, so that there would be some accountability. That way we're not just handing it all out to whoever and whenever when it comes.
Well, I think
there's gotta be
everybody's in favor of that.
Yeah.
Everybody's in favor of that.
So there's gotta be rules for those fobs, you know what I mean, just like there is for anything else. You know, make sure that, you know, who's coming in, you know, when they're coming in. I know there's been a lot of talk about unfettered 24/7 access, which nobody wants. Said it millions of times. Nobody wants to come in there way after hours or anything like that. It's literally just something that is gonna adapt the policy or involve a new policy that's gonna involve the board and let them know or what we intend on, as far as like you know, in use, you know, you're not gonna be bringing in other people, maybe it could be something, you know, I heard concerns about that, who else would you be bringing in? You know, would be access for people to see who and when showed up when, you know, like, is there a common,
Okay.
records of that?
Okay.
I mean, there's all sorts of things you can look at, but I believe that's what the intent was, and I believe that's what your question was, what is our intent?
Okay, okay. Okay. So policy 9150, is the only policy that really mentions board members. The 7440 mentions board, but in 9150, it says individual board members who are interested in visiting schools or classrooms on an unofficial basis shall make the appropriate arrangement with the principal, of course. In keeping with board bylaws, such board members' visits shall not be considered to be official unless designated as such by the board. Okay, so, you know, there's a kind of an important distinction there. The board members shall be, the board members shall be visited as an interested individual in a similar capacity of any parent or citizen of the community. These visits should not be considered to be inspections or as supervisory in nature. So, you know, the board members are permitted to you know, to be there for unofficial reasons.
Of course, we're not talking about that.
So, but official reasons, I would say, if it's gonna be like to, you know, make observations and make a report back to the board, should be considered, it should be specifically authorized by the board, right?
I don't get what you're getting at on that point.
Okay.
So, you're trying to distinguish that if us going to facilities should be official or unofficial, is that what you're trying to get at?
Well, that's what this policy
That's what the language
says.
is.
That's what this policy says.
For the spirit of what we're trying to achieve, you know, transparency and having board members be able to communicate, good, you know, information, potentially, bad information.
Report to who?
Well, obviously, it would be to the board or to the superintendent. So, but, I mean, we can maneuver that the way we should, but the spirit of it, or the intent is to be in the facilities to be a resource, not an hindrance.
Okay, yeah.
If I might just ask some reflective comments here in terms of my years of experience and I sent you, unfortunately, just recently here, I mean, an article that talks about the importance of board members being in schools. In part of that is because of the complexity of our school and the decisions and questions that come to you. You know, it's to elevate your understanding about what really is you know, what we are supporting and passing policies on to support. So again, I think how you start framing an issue in terms of how you go into it, you kind of have existing policies, you may not how they got there into the first place. I would just say, you know, we can frame this as you're just another person, or you can frame this of the importance of the board members to have good, deep understanding, of which we try to do at board meetings. But as you would read that one article that I sent you, it talks about what happens when you see things live.
When the what?
When you see things live. You know, you see
Oh,
things
yeah,
live,
sure,
you know,
sure.
You have a much deeper level of understanding about what we're talking about. So it's something that I would encourage, you know, whether or not you're coming with me, you know, and you know, it even identifies in that article that, you know, don't have the superintendent take you to where he wants to take you. Have the superintendent ask you, where do you want to go? I mean, it's kind of encouraging a deeper awareness and understanding of our work.
Okay.
Because that's how you support it. The more you know, the more you can support. everybody's always making observations of something, but I'm seeing this in a constructive, positive way. But again, in terms of how this issue, and I wasn't here when this first issue surfaced, and I recognize it was, if I understand correctly, this article, this issue first surfaced when, I think it was on a Sunday, the ad hoc group was trying to get into a building so that they could hold a meeting, because they're just trying to help the district out.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do it, but then I think it may have gotten a life of its own. So then all of a sudden it received a negative frame in some ways, in terms of how some people are viewing this. I would like to draw our attention back to what we agreed are priorities, and that's student achievements.
Right.
Okay, and
Well, have we
recognize some
yeah.
issues, and so what helps you understand what teachers are attempting to do in administration to really kind of support that cause. The more you know, the more you can support, the more you get into some discussions that need to be considered, the more you understand it, because you may have, more opportunity. But I'm not talking about disrupting classrooms or anything of that nature. But, I'm talking about,
Okay,
and
Jim, I'm just trying to
right.
be, not just aware, but sensitive to the
Right.
issues that keep being brought up. And one of the issues that keep being brought up is, well, the schools aren't particularly safe. I mean, we last spring had a number of incidents where, a teacher was, hit by a chair and kicked and thrown on the ground, on the floor, and it took a while for somebody to get there. So if we're dealing with issues of safety, I think it would help, to have access to the buildings and the environments in the buildings for the observations of board members. And I want to be clear that I'm all in favor of board members being fully informed and aware, so that we do make, really, decisions based on reality. On the other hand, there are people here every meeting who are saying, boy, we don't want spy expeditions going on there. We don't want gotcha, a gotcha sort of mentality. And I'm worried about teachers feeling that they're not being trusted by the board, that they're gonna be spied on, they're gonna be ratted on by board members who just slipped in, et cetera, et cetera. So, you shake your head and you say, well, I have no intention of doing that, but people are worried about that. People are worried about that.
You've heard some people say that, Kerry. You've also heard other people in support of that too, so let's not just blow up one side. However, that's just one tool as well, as what he was saying, and the security aspect and everything as well too. But just like me, I work for a company that, when a CEO comes in, even my last company I worked for, when a CEO comes in and they say, I'll be in there next week, Thursday, everybody goes around and paints the walkways, dusts off the shelves, and makes sure that everything is straight.
Oh, sure.
And all that other stuff. I don't wanna see that.
Yeah,
I don't care.
that's
I myself have gone,
cosmetics, yeah.
Kerry, I myself have gone to a couple of different schools already and met with principals. And we actually had an itinerary list, and all the teachers were aware, every single one, well, this one was not, might be a little bit, nervous to be in the room, so it's fine, we can skip whatever, but point is, I don't really need a list or an itinerary like he had said before. Don't tell me where you're gonna show me, I'll let you know where I wanna go. I don't need an entire day or a week or whatever of preparation for people to know when I'm coming or anything like that. So that's just one thing too.
Okay.
Another thing too is when you're in a different job or whatever, and you see the boss comes in, or if you're a teacher, the superintendent wants to come in, that's one of those things that they hear, hey, boss here, nobody needs to be afraid of any of that stuff. Our whole intention is to get people used to us being around and seeing us, and us letting them know that we are there to help. You know what I mean? We're there to check out.
Okay,
all
I think
sorts
we
of
can
things.
accomplish that through a good policy statement that will kind of frame the motives, the intents.
I don't think
the
policy needs to
separate-
have a
because
motive
I
set.
can tell you right now, Matt, that people are afraid.
Kerry, I don't think, the whole thing is that when we're adapting or changing or developing a policy, motive, we need to have guidelines on the use of it. We don't need to put a motive in there. I'm not sure why you're coming up with that or where this is all coming from. It seems like you're trying to turn and just tilt it a little bit, and I don't wanna get you into that point, and stop you right there and say, we need to go with exactly the terms of the use of the funds. It's already been cleared, as that way it's been passed.
I'll just speak up and say that the intent is that the previous superintendent said we need all people on board, and we had issue, and then I talked to the principal at the facility and said, I feel frankly that I don't have protection, and I'm scared, if we need to bring in more liaison officers. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm invested in this community, and I wanna help out, and by me going to a facility once in a while, now I have a full-time job, full father, full family, I'm not, the intent of this is to be a supplement, eyes and ears to help out, instead of just being siloed in a boardroom and having emails bombarded at me, 150-page emails, which we all know the reality of it. That's why I did.
150, not
Yeah,
pages?
the budget was 150
Oh, yeah,
pages.
okay.
But I read it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
anyways, but so what I'm saying is, I'm trying to connect the community with the voters, with the schools. So
Okay.
by me being into the schools once in a while, or you, Gary, or Matthew, or Tony, or Colin, or Kathy, or the next elected official, that's how we bring transparency and trust into our district. And not by pushing it through a hard-willed effort, but by being transparent and honest on the grounds of academic achievement and behavior lacking. So if we can bring some security and stability into our district, and yes, I understand that there's always gonna be fear, because there's change. But obviously what we've been doing isn't working. And we can play tic-tac words if you'd like, but I'm interested in just trying to help out our community through these fobs being open access, and how we frame it today. Maybe we won't get through it, I don't care.
Yeah, well, we'll work on it for sure.
Okay, well, we can go forward, or we can continue to argue, or.
Well, I'm not
discussion.
arguing, I've just, Matt said, I don't know where this is coming from, and the fact is, it's coming from, you know, for 3 months of debate in the campaign. I mean, the rhetoric used in the campaign was enough to frighten the hell out of teachers and a good many parents. With the emphasis on, you know, critical race theory for months and months and months, for, you know, the homophobic statements that have been made.
Are you seriously
et
bringing
cetera.
up CRT and LGBT when we're talking about PX stuff? Come on, let's stick on
Yes,
task
we
here.
are,
Not
yes,
going
we
this.
are, because, you know, we're talking about, I'm gonna go into the schools and I'm gonna just drop into a classroom, and I'm gonna pick up whatever phrases are being used and call that CRT.
Where did you hear that?
I heard it, I heard enough about this.
Can you
stuff in the
give
campaign.
me an
And
instance
I
where you
wasn't
heard it from one
alone,
of the
because
people
it
in
was
the campaign?
public.
Cause I guarantee you didn't hear it from Matt Natatone, that's for sure.
So, the campaign.
Matt or Tony, I think we heard a lot from Tony on that.
But it's nothing about stopping in and checking out this classrooms right away and using phrases that the teachers say and calling it CRT, I'm not.
Well,
sure.
let me
That's
tell you,
just a
that's
little
part
bit
of the,
overboard,
that's part of
Terry.
the
You're getting
emotional
political on
reality
this.
surrounding this whole thing.
I think that's his purpose, so we need to stay controlled, because obviously, you know, this is a public meeting, the more views, the better for some people, but obviously, I'm here for achievement
I
and the
understand that.
safety of our students.
I'm not gonna get dragged.
So I want, so let's not take debate on that, because it
I
doesn't take.
just want in a public setting
I know what
to
you mean. I know your aim.
have intentions made clear so that the public and the teachers and everybody else can then say, oh, it's only about this.
Sure,
It's
so,
only about this.
I'm speaking for myself, but the intent is to bring transparency to the district and to facilitate any improvements that can be done. And I frankly don't wanna just sit behind a laptop, because I've never really enjoyed just sitting behind a laptop. I like to be involved in communicating with the facility members. And hypothetically, I do know what it's like to be in the classroom, and I do know what it's like to have a planned observation, because I was a teacher. And planned observation has nothing to do anywhere reality to real life, everyday classroom. So.
Right.
And that's the truth, that's the statement.
That's
Anybody wants to ask me any more about it, I'm here, open book.
Okay, well,
That's my-
that was my opening concern, and now I'd like to know what you'd like to do with the policies. what ideas you have, what sort of things do we need to do in order to, make it clear that this is what the FOBs will be used to do, this is what school board members using the FOBs will do. I mean, I think that would like
Very good.
really take the heat out of this issue, and I'd like to really take the heat out of it, because we've got much bigger fish to fry than FOBs. I mean, we have a school system to rebuild. You know, and I don't wanna get diverted off onto these sorts of things that smack of, the cultural wars. I just think that, okay, if this is just a utilitarian thing, we can handle it, right?
Right.
Okay, very good.
So we were looking at two different ones, right? 9150 was one, and you said the other one was.
Yeah, 9150 is the first one, yeah.
Correct.
I think that's the most important one too.
Which could just be an addendum added to that, could be a short little addendum, added, along, basically, I think stipulating, making sure that nobody's bringing anybody else into the schools with them.
Okay.
That being used during reasonable times, as close to school hours as possible, because in case it's a weekend or something where we have a meeting or whatever, like that when incidents happen, or, trying to keep things in a reasonable manner of what you're using them for, and then accountability for if they get lost, what would happen, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think there should be some kind of time parameters on it too, I think that.
Yeah.
When we talked after the meeting and Chris said, well, teachers can use them between 5 in the morning and 11 at night.
I see, I can't even imagine why anybody would wanna go there after 6 at night, but, maybe we had a building and grounds meeting late.
Well, if there's a meeting or
So
something.
it could be possible,
people would
at
get
11,
in.
that's quite.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think, I think in a way, this is, school visitors is the title of 9150. And I think that we probably could do an addendum, unless it might be more clear to simply write a new policy. But we could do an addendum. So,
What do you think, Jim?
Well, I think it's, my sense is everybody wants, to be able to have access within the normal operations of the school district. And we're talking specifically, that we're seeing board members have a responsibility.
Right.
And so kind of an awareness, we really want to promote, access, because I think that there's support, but it's obviously without, interrupting, it's without putting something in safety. It may be, something along the lines too of, even if it's not announced, the importance sometimes of checking into the office is just so that they know who's in the office in case there's a fire or a threat. That's always so that we know that if we need to evacuate or close down, we just know who's there, but not, again, I have a mindset that believe we need to have board members in the buildings more than less, but not to disrupt anything, but obviously, and sometimes it's with the assistants, so that you could actually see more. I'm not sure what we see sometimes in the hallway or whatever, but nobody wants to disrupt the classroom.
I think if we do an addendum, we don't have to amend these.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how much you've really looked at this. I think,
Like 9151 or something?
Well,
9151, I think, these things seem to be fine to me. But how to shoehorn in, this extra activity that school board members now are intending to, engage in. I think that we can do that as an addendum to, the security stuff, I think, looks to me, what do you think, Michael? It looks to me to be
as a matter of.
pretty
as a matter
whole and
like
okay.
Of housekeeping or semantics, I would say we do a revision of the policy, because the policy, I don't think we pull the whole policy up, but we revise it, because 9150 was revised in 2012 and again in 2014.
and we could just adjust this, put a revision, and that way you don't have to, go through all of the other stuff, that's fine. Change the things that need to change and maybe call it a revision. instead of
Okay.
addendum. And then that would stand, I think, what we have done
Okay.
historically with the documents.
There's an amendment, yeah.
As far as housekeeping goes.
So, would you think that we should begin by, bottom paragraph, individual board members, starting with individual board members, the two bottom paragraphs on the first page? And, the two paragraphs on the second page could be cut out,
Yeah,
could be cut out and then replaced with
different verbiage.
different, yeah.
We should probably come up with some of the
Different
stuff that we wanna
stipulations.
add in there.
Leave the
Yeah.
things that you can live with,
Yeah.
change the things you wanna change.
So,
Or delete and rephrase, or delete and clarify.
Well, my sense is the distinction between official and unofficial is pretty,
well, I read the
Pretty
bylaws,
meaningless.
I couldn't find it.
It's gonna be a
Pretty
I
perception.
meaningless.
read the
Yeah.
bylaws, and I couldn't find it.
It's gonna be a perception thing, but it should be common sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'm there, like today, I was at Washington getting my daughter's ID picture taken, that's not an official business, you know what I mean? I'm in there, I'm not there
yeah,
checking.
yeah, you don't need a file for that.
Right, no, right, exactly, you know what I mean? So, that's just one of those things, but,
Yeah, no, I
you know.
mean,
So individual board
Should
members
cover
who are interested in visiting schools, I think that paragraph should be eliminated.
I think so too.
And then.
Do you wanna put that as a motion? Or do you wanna just discuss this and then
I'll
do it?
discuss it before, but I
Okay.
just wanna follow through with it, so, that paragraph, I think we could eliminate, and then we could write verbiage that would, what I'm seeing is that, now, I'll only be here for a short period of time, you will only be here for a short period of time, but I think the essence of what you were kind of the motive is to bring transparency and engagement into the school. And almost, you're tasking them almost to be involved. So I think if we, instead of, a board member, it's a responsibility, so I would almost wanna change the classification of what a board member is, not just a visitor, but, like more so,
Right, I know.
a custodian or administrator or, something that we can put some verbiage to that, is something that we've already created.
Right.
So, like,
I think there's,
What about the policy, like whatever we have that governs anybody with key fob access, why can't they just be added in, I guess?
that's what, yeah, I mean, like.
We already have some sort of, rules and regulations as far as what anybody with key fob access is, why can't they just add, and that would include everybody, you know what I mean?
So I think it would be an administrative,
Okay.
like, that's the role that I think that we're in, we're obviously administrative, that is a board access one, but we're individuals that come together, so I think it's an administrative role.
let me just read you the clause up here in 740,
Are we on the?
7440.
Which policy are we on?
7440 is a policy that precedes this one. And in it says, to protect the buildings and equipments, now get this word, protects the buildings and equipments owned by the board from theft, vandalism, in order to maintain an optimism condition for carrying out the educational program. So the very phrase owned by the board indicates that, shit, the board can go in anytime it wants. There's no, that pretty much removes all restrictions.
Thanks for, I'll put you on record.
Well, that's what it says.
I know.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
It struck me as like,
I think the community's
maybe
asking-
owned by the people, and, and the board being the agents of the people.
I think that the,
Exactly.
right,
So,
And
and I
then-
think for simplicity, I think board members should be considered like an administrative role, and then we would send it to legal to make sure that that's all through with whatever we approve today. But that's how I would make it simple.
I just read that because it seems to me that there's no obstacle to the board members right embedded in that phrase.
Mm-hmm. And you agree with that?
That's what the policy says. I mean, I would reword it in a different way if I were writing it, as, you know, the board of the agencies of the people who own them, you know. The board on behalf of the ownership, being the community, you know, where is that? You know, to protect the building and the buildings and equipment owned by the board. And theft and vandalism in the north too. I would guess that's probably legally already passed muster.
You're saying you want to identify us as the board?
Well, I'm just saying, you know, that policy is an enabling, that's an enabling phrase, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so then all we have to do then is to deal with, board visits by board members. And I think you're right, individual board members who are interested in visiting schools and classes. I mean, I don't think we need that. I don't think we need permission.
You're saying eliminate that sentence?
I think eliminate that sentence. Eliminate the two sentences in that paragraph.
Which, what's the second one?
The second one is in keeping with board bylaws.
Oh, yeah, I was
Such
saying
board
board
members, visits shall be considered to be official unless designated as such by the board. I mean, I don't know what that accomplishes at all. I don't know what that does, I don't know what that allows or disallows, et cetera. It just seems to be in this case, when board members have access to these buildings, it's like, you don't have to ask permission. Right?
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say.
Okay.
I'm okay with eliminating that, sentence at this moment, or the paragraph.
And board members shall be visiting as an interested individual in a similar capacity to any parent or citizen of the community. Well, that's not true.
That isn't true.
These visits shall not be considered to be inspections or as supervisory in nature. Well, I mean,
They're talking about specifically the unofficial visits, is what they're talking about, which in an unofficial visit, you should speak with the principal, make an appointment, that type of thing. I mean,
okay.
That's something. that's
So,
something-
what the thing is that you're gonna have access to all the buildings. So what are the parameters? What are the limitations on using that?
Right, that's what I was trying to get at before.
And for what purposes? You know?
We should, well, official business versus unofficial business, there's, if you go into what purposes,
Right.
we could listen off forever, but I think we should get into the point of the different parameters like you're talking about. So, when you do come in, I think the first thing that you should do is you should be checking in with somebody and let them know what's going on. I can understand that, not a problem.
All right, okay, let's be
How about
systematic.
the times,
Yeah, let's be, he's
Go
going
ahead.
I'd like to offer this as a potential rationale, I don't know for sure, but I've always been explained that the school board, the power is in the mass of the school board, not just one member.
Right, that's right.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so
That's right.
perhaps this is getting to the semantics of, well, as one person coming in the school building, unless the board says, I want you to go and look at this, that's like an official capacity, because the entire board has asked a member to go there individually, versus you wanting to go in the building and as an individual, but not not authorized by the board. Does that make sense?
Yeah, cause I made
I
that,
wonder if
I made
that's
that
not what-
distinction
what
early
you're getting
on.
at. I'm not sure.
I would just clarify, you know, what I wouldn't want, is that somehow we're communicating, and I don't believe we are, that a board member goes in there and directs a principal to do anything, or a teacher to do anything, they have no power to do that.
Right, or a teacher.
But board members individually, in making up the whole, are contributing to the whole by what they know and what they understand, and the decisions that are made are at the boardroom
Right.
by the whole board, but it's made up of individual members. So again, though, you know, board members could be out there not to make decisions, but it's part of their support, part of their understanding, and it contributes then to the effectiveness of board meetings, because you're gonna learn a lot more and understand more when you start seeing some things, and that sometimes it's gonna even be something that I'm gonna wanna take you to, or a principal might want, or teachers might invite you into. You know,
So I think we should start with
visitor and board members, in all honesty.
What'd you say?
So I think we
Distinction between visitor and board members.
I think there needs to be.
And I think that there's always been that understanding, we just haven't thought about it until we have an issue that unfortunately is
Right.
framed in a negative. And yet I can see where there could be concerns, okay? But why do you have, right now, why were you issued, ID badges? I mean, why were you issued ID badges? Because you know, it's almost like you're on official business, right? You're a board member. You know, and part of your business is a member of the board with the board making decisions, but also, you know, we try to educate the whole board, meaning individuals and then collectively making decisions. I just don't want to lose perspective here in terms of, you know, it goes back to Matt's comment about how we've all agreed about how important student achievement is, and everything that we understand that helps promote it or might take away from it is important to us. You know, so I see this much more in a supportive learning role.
Well, then we should begin with a statement that, if for the purposes of,
I would agree with that. I mean.
you know, for the purposes of greater transparency and being better informed.
That's a great one.
I like that.
For the purposes of fuller transparency and for board members to be better informed.
Right.
You're communicating out to all stakeholders, taxpayers, teachers, support, you know, putting, you know, in, you know.
Okay, we don't have anybody taking notes. Oh, you taking notes?
Well, I'm gonna try to keep up, but
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, I know, it's kind of rambling right now. It
Mill it
really
out a
is.
little bit, I'm not Lori.
Yeah, no, it is pretty rambling, but I think we need a statement, you know.
That sounds good.
Um,
Mhm.
In the intent,
what did I say?
For the purpose, yeah.
For the purposes of.
Purposes of.
Greater transparency.
Fuller transparency. And,
Understanding.
for greater transparency and fuller understanding.
And in support of our schools.
Yeah. For let's see, for transparency and full understanding, board members will have I don't know if I need an adjective there, but have access, shall have access to Manawha Public School District buildings and facilities.
During your term of office.
No, I don't think we need that.
Yeah, because once you're not a board member.
Okay, sounds good.
Do you wanna have any clarity in terms of doing,
I think.
Under the following, conditions.
Yeah, that's fine, because that's where we can implement
Yeah.
the background check,
Yeah, it must
times, obviously.
complete a background check, you know, during operation hours. I know.
See, I think, you know, under the building and facilities, for the purposes of, and for the following purposes. Following purposes. And under the following conditions. Okay, is that all right? All right. For the purposes of greater transparency and fuller understanding, board members shall have access to Manawatu Public School District buildings and facilities for the following purposes and under the following conditions.
I don't know the following purposes, but I would say under the following conditions. Like I said, you get to the following purposes, now you're gonna be listing a gazillion different things. We already identified that.
I guess,
Yeah,
Right.
I guess the transparency, yeah, we don't need that.
The only thing I do like is if we had like, it has to be in a good faith effort, or, it shouldn't come off like it's in a vindictive or.
Absolutely, that's why we.
Correct.
That's why
we need
I would
do
like to
this.
add, give me different actually, but in a good faith effort or
Good faith, I think you get a better understanding of the scope.
maybe I'm getting a little wordy, but.
No, that's all
I'm just
right.
trying to
I
put
think-
a
I think
broader
that-
understanding of the educational process.
You know, one of the things that, you know, that just needs to be understood in this, it's not an administrative role, but in a board role.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
taking board action, but it's a different capacity. You're not there to supervise, you know, to direct.
Not at all.
Obviously, you know.
Observational.
Right.
Okay, board
And
members.
supportive. I mean, it's,
What about we just say board members, comma, for legitimate reasons? For legitimate, or for legitimate board authorized reasons.
Well,
That's
The board
too-
is charged.
too vague.
Yeah, that's too bad.
I just want to.
Well, I see, you know, the thing is what you're saying is the good faith thing isn't like, well, I'm in there on a personal hunt.
Exactly.
Would be bad faith.
Yep.
But I'm there to further 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 the mission of the board. Is good faith, right? Okay, so we could say it like that, or we could just, you could say on the, for legitimate board purposes. Which is, yeah, kind of vague, you know, but this is an introductory thing.
Yeah, when you say it like that, you can pretty much word anything.
Well, okay, what about?
I would just say, stick with the definition before of the unofficial and official business. We all know
Oh,
unofficial.
no, we don't wanna do that.
No,
We don't wanna
I
do
wanna-
that. Why would we wanna do that?
Just because, I mean, it's common sense, whether it's well, see, me as a parent.
If it's unofficial, you don't, you know.
You guys see it as that way, but to me, I have both different things, because I have daughters.
Yeah, but you do that as a citizen.
I'm there, right, I'm there as unofficially, nothing to do with the board, I'm there as a parent, you know.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately.
Here's another way of looking for something, because you're looking at, statements that sometimes they use in different contexts.
Yeah.
For example, if a board member makes a public comment, they should clarify it's personal,
Yeah.
not official. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
You know, I mean, you know, so there are many ways that can be, official typically means that the board has directed you to do something.
Right,
As a
right.
board member, or as
Right.
as a committee chair, you know, you're chairing this committee, it's been somewhat sanctioned by the very nature of the appointment. That sometimes is the, you know, you're acting in official capacity, or you're just acting as a board member. I mean, with, you know, you're trying to learn as a board member.
What about we start, okay, like, you know, unofficial is like, well, if I go to a football game, geez, you know, do I have to, you know, get a note from the principal or something? No. You know, it's just like the unofficial stuff is like, I don't even see the need for mentioning that.
I agree.
But this is official stuff, because it's, I'd say, we could just start the whole first, the topic sentence, that in pursuance of the mission of the board, for purposes of greater transparency and fuller understanding, board members,
I think that that's.
okay,
He's up, right? Just finished his book.
This is his new book.
okay. Okay. And then I think, under the following conditions, I think, yeah, eliminate for the following purposes, because we've already said that, under the following conditions, and I think we should,
Now we can get into it.
now we get into like, the rules of using the fall,
Yep.
okay?
So I think, I've said it would be good policy to sign in at the office.
Well, let's start with the time.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
Between, the fob may be used between the hours of.
Five AM to 11 PM or?
No. We've got several different categories depending on their nature of the job, of what they have access to.
Okay.
So Chartwell's, some of the high school folks, they can get in really early because they've got to be cooking. Maintenance, IT, we have 24/7 because we may need to respond to building issues. School principals and the admin here in this building have 24/7. So, and we've got, then it branches out from there. So we have other folks that have limited, availability just for their own individual building.
Is there a way to word it to where it's, you can use the word reasonable pertaining to your visit? And the reason why I say that is because to me, I heard some.
Boy, that's open for
The reason why I say that is because there's pertaining to your visit, because there is like, I've heard all sorts of crazy accusations, and I kinda agree. I don't think there's any reason why a board member needs to be there in the middle of the night.
Right,
It's just
exactly,
dumb.
exactly, and this protects the board member.
Right, that's why I'm just,
Done.
I was just saying, is reasonable too vague?
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Could you have, during, normal school, hours or events or previously arranged?
If you, what I would like to add is and maybe either the horse or the cart, depending on where you're seeing it, is, I love the fact that you wanna check in because that's integral to the 7440 policy, to go check in.
Sure.
In order to check in, the secretaries might be driving what time you can get there because they would be checking you in. My custodian that gets there at 6 wouldn't check you in, but you go to the school office, that would be more like 7 o'clock. Right, is that about right for?
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that if there's nobody at the school office to check in, like say it was the weekend, or say it wasn't, hey, we're gonna have this, we're gonna meet at Washington, whatever, to look at the gym, the only time we can get there is 6:30 at night, or whatever, I mean.
Yeah,
That's
right,
where I was
right.
saying, or previously arranged, because
Sure.
previously arranged, you could call Chris up and say, I need to have our fobs access, because you can change some things, can you not, or not?
I can.
So, I mean, even though I don't know how much can be done remotely, because obviously, we don't want to necessarily incur additional costs. And, again, if it was board business, some things have to be posted. I mean, I don't wanna, if you've got issues with the superintendent, you're meeting with the attorney, you might be doing this over the weekend.
Right, so I just think we just need a timeline. I would say from 7 AM, until 9 PM, what I would start. Because I envision at the bottom of all this, that any exceptions to these rules, there might be exceptions. It might be like, well, we decided to have a meeting at, 11:30 Sunday night or something. And, we wanna have access. Well, then I think for exceptions, you have to like, get the approval of the board and the superintendent, and, et cetera, et cetera. But we haven't got there yet, but there could be exceptions.
And I would ask, do you think it's a normal thing or feasible? How often would it occur that you guys would be at a building on weird hours without an administrator or a director or someone that has access?
Probably never, but, you
So, I
know,
mean,
but there might be an exception.
Well, right, there might be some.
That's why I talked about previously arranged.
There might be some
Yeah.
built-in thing like Jim is saying, that if
Right.
you've got an oddball time outside those hours, chances are you're probably gonna be with someone who can get you in, and if not, we schedule it
Right.
and arrange it for you to have access to what you need.
Okay,
Does that seem reasonable and
I
fairly
mean, all this
defined?
is pretty much reasonable relative to school hours, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
what that reasonable.
I
range
say,
is.
I say six
Um,
to six, or 7 to 7, whatever it is, like that, something simple.
well, but there may be something going on, you know,
Especially then.
there might be teachers' parents night or something like that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be open.
You wanna go and say, I'd be interested in seeing what goes on.
Sure. But then we're gonna be entering in with the masses, honestly, yeah.
6 to 9, let's do 6 to 9. That's about as,
Sure.
6 AM, you wouldn't be able to check in at the office.
okay.
At
Well,
six-
we
at
wouldn't
6
for
AM.
6 to 9.
Okay.
We can, nurse, we can write within school hours, you can go to the office or something. That would be stipulated. We'll move forward.
And the other thing pursuant to the, important to the visitors is that, in both policies, and I think 7440 mentions that we have them come into one entrance of the building. For visitors, it says, all visitors in the school building during those times will be directed to a single entrance in the building.
I don't know if that's.
I'm not, I think that has anything to do with it.
Well,
Yeah, I don't
let's
think
go
so.
back to 9150. I think I would make a motion to remove those two paragraphs. Individual board members who are
Okay.
interested in visiting schools, or classrooms, that paragraph, and then the one below it, board members shall be visiting interested individuals.
Okay.
So I would make a motion to remove those two lines.
This is in 9150.
Then we just go on.
And it's a paragraph, the bottom paragraph on page 1, the second from the bottom paragraph on page 1, and what else?
May I make a suggestion? To keep this fluid, I don't know if we need to do motions to
Okay.
omit things. I think we consider the draft.
Yeah, you're right.
We bring it back to the
You're right.
next meeting,
It's fine.
and then you would make a motion to.
As a board.
To do the revision. And that way it would be.
Once we
You
do,
don't have
once
to
we
undo any motions, it's just a draft.
Yeah, once we get the rules
A
down,
working
we have
document.
we have a coherent, we're agreed on a coherent amendment. Then we vote to remove what needs to be removed,
Make a
and for this to
revision.
be inserted in.
So, and I'll make
Okay.
some notes.
I was just trying.
That's okay.
trying to-
I'll make some notes as to what you'd like me to omit.
Well, then, let's go back to where you were, then you wanted to bounce to the other policy.
Okay, the second,
Well,
I'm just trying to fulfill what you wanted to bounce to the next.
Well, I
Yeah, you said-
just wanted to find out if that was with the single entrance.
I think we probably want to eliminate that.
Correct.
You know, use the clause anytime, use the
One
clause.
of the questions, again, I think we need to think about is distinguishing visitor from board member. Distinguishing visitor from staff member, do we restrict staff members' entrance, we're trusting them in terms of, obviously,
I think we
certain
should-
responsibilities.
I think we should
Some of the
also-
things that you need to be concerned about, we aren't leaving doors open, there's all kinds of security issues, that you could have that could.
Okay,
pose
okay,
a risk.
let me suggest this for the second thing. That while school is in session, board members, having gained access to the building, must check in and register.
Right, I agree with that.
Okay.
And I also think that what helped with the distinguish, just like me today, like I said, of Washington, I didn't wear my lanyard with my ID because I was not a board member, just a parent. I think that's a way to distinguish whether or not you're there as a board member. or a parent, or whatever it might be, is make sure that you are wearing your ID. Is that something that we should put in there? That way people know it's an MPSD, because like you said, I know there was concerns about people seeing, at first, strange people walking the hall, but they can distinguish themselves as an MPSD with an ID, you know, a member of MPSD with an ID, yes or no?
Is it policy for people to wear their badges all the time?
I don't know.
It is common in many schools, I don't know.
It's
Probably
whatever,
not policy.
whatever we,
That's what I'm saying, probably not policy.
if it's not policy, we make a policy, that is
It's
policy, we take it away.
It's encouraged.
Well,
We're
okay,
getting
let's say,
policies.
okay, let's just do this one though. During regular school hours, board members must register at the office.
Yeah, check in.
Sign in.
Register, sign in, sign
Sign
in,
in,
okay.
sure.
Okay. Okay, 3. During the period within, you know, within the building, you wanna have board members should, we don't have to do a must, but should, wear their identification.
Sure. I like it, and if I'm there to actually visit with, teachers or principals, speaking with them as a board member, I always make sure that when
It's a visual sign, that people, you know, could spot to say, okay,
It's
it's
a stranger.
it's a staff member or board member.
Sure, I would respect that, I don't think there's nothing wrong with that.
Is should stronger?
Is probably the better one.
Should wear.
Okay, 'cause the reality is, who's gonna enforce it? The administrator, the principal, or what are we gonna do to enforce it? So it's not like.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a, you know,
The
this
Yeah.
should
should
is a good word, because then there's
Yeah,
intent,
right.
identifying.
It's just like, okay, it's just, it's a,
These are guidelines.
Guidelines.
it's a prudent thing rather than a mandatory thing. It's a prudent thing, yeah. Official.
Where the MPSD issued ID badge.
Sure, and I
Guys, I don't think
you gotta add much more than that, the times, checking in.
I have no idea where it is.
You should
Okay.
not be bringing anybody else in with you unless it's priorly approved.
Okay.
By the district administrator.
By the
I don't know if
district
you wanna put, do you wanna put that?
I personally, yeah.
I think these are good rules of the road, so they know.
Right,
but
I've heard
don't
that
bring in,
before.
Yes, it's just you.
In discussion, especially on social media, and I don't think that's wrong to address that. I would say not be bringing in people that are not an employee or have no business being there, other than, you know, if it's gonna be
Okay, I
something,
think
if it's gonna be
that's
something that's
a good
approved by
thing.
the district
For
administrator.
board
All right, so
members
what,
only.
give me a statement. Number 4.
For board member use only.
Yes, that you're declaring it for board.
Well, I would just say that, no board member should be bringing in anyone else to the school building unless
He said
finally
that,
approved.
but that's the, he said for only board use, only.
For board member use only.
Okay, unless priorly approved by the
District
superintendent or district administrator, or even the principal, whatever it may be, you know what I mean? I think it'd be respectful to let them know, hey, I got, somebody else
I
coming.
think it should just be district administrator.
I would think so too.
Okay, where do you want that? Where do you want that?
I think this is under the 1, 2, 3, 4. under-
Yeah, I know it's under 1, 2, 3, 4, but
Oh.
where? Under 1?
I think everything we've been identifying, I've been writing down as bullet points.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna
sorry.
try to write this up as a coherent policy, so.
Uh,
But, you know, fob use is permitted, fob use is restricted to, the times between 6 AM and 7 PM. That's one. During, I think what you're saying is important. During your regular school hours, board members must sign in at the office. 3,
Would you be opposed with, should in that instance too?
I think everything should be a should, just because once you make it a demand, then you have to have a consequence for what happens if it doesn't, and really what could happen, you're just creating a ball of wax.
I think it's a little stronger to check in than the other stuff.
Okay, so say I walk in and I don't check in, what's gonna happen?
So I'm saying, so you do
Well,
should.
What are you gonna do?
Well, I'm not gonna do anything.
I know, I just,
But, you know, the fact of the matter is that somebody, you know, that is responsibility for that building, might bump into you and say, well, who the hell are you? You know, what are you doing here? Oh, you didn't check in, you didn't sign up?
Yeah, that's where,
that's why you get where the,
I think they should also be on the premises, because I've been asked, when I'm looking at a playground or whatever, and you're on the premises or in the buildings, it's a peace of mind when you got that, and I always thank them for asking me, because it tells me that they're monitoring adults. The
I'm
creepy-
very well
The
aware of
creepy
that.
bald fat guy that's walking around the playground area, that's me, and they come up and talk to me about it.
Yeah.
And I thank them for checking me out, and
Yeah.
you know, for the safety of the kids, we expect that for them to monitor the playground, and I always
really
thank them.
want people to talk.
Okay, in the kind of the preamble statement, we use the terms, access to the Manawha Public School District's buildings and facilities. So these rules apply to both buildings and facilities, where, you know, use of fobs during the time from 6 to 7, during regular school hours, 6 to 9. More than 10 stuff, right?
Is it 9 or 7?
9,
Right, okay.
yeah.
And then, put it to 7, okay.
During regular school hours, you know, on the facilities, or on facilities, must sign in at the office. I think that doesn't apply to facilities, does it?
Well, and it
You
also
don't
doesn't
check
apply
in.
if we're doing something at 8 o'clock at night, we're having a meeting, whatever, we can't go and sign in. That's why I think you're trying to.
I know,
say-
I said during
You
regular,
should
I
say-
said during regular school
Oh, okay.
hours.
Yeah, and you
The
definitely.
statement
should.
says during regular school hours. Okay,
I just would like the word change from must to should, but then we can agree about that.
Only because it creates a ball of wax if something happens. Because there's really nothing to do about it, we just really should sign in.
And the should comes back if there's a understanding that there's.
Okay.
If there's abuse,
Sure.
we revisit it then, you know, to the extent that do we need to change the policy, or do we restrict somebody's access because of
Sure.
a board action?
Right, from a board action, that could be done too.
oh, yeah, that comes with the exceptions, you know,
Sure.
that comes with the exceptions. During the regular school hours, board members should sign in at the office. Well, in the building or on the facilities, board members should wear official identification.
Sounds good.
Alright. 4. Now, here's where we get into,
What's next, Gary?
well, okay, so let's say,
We already did
let's say
this.
you're in the building, let's say you're in the building at 10 o'clock in the morning and you wanna like, go to so-and-so social studies class.
Sure, and you checked it,
Okay, you checked in.
and wearing your ID.
And I think that, I don't, you know, and as Matt said, and as I used to be department chairman, and I'd go and observe people, you know, who were doing classes.
Sure.
And of course, I knew full well that, you know, I'd say, well, I'll be there Thursday at 1 o'clock. And you can bet, you know, they were really, really prepared that Thursday at that 1 o'clock time.
I hear you.
And so in order to get a more candid view, I mean, I'm, this is a difficult one for me because I think that in some ways, while teachers don't have complete sovereignty over the classroom, they should have, you know, jurisdiction over the classroom in a real way.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a question.
Yeah, and so if, you know, the board member wishes to visit a class, that has to be clear with the principal.
I would say with a principal or administrator, or, I'm referring to myself.
Okay.
I might wanna take you on observations, where I have access, and it might be on an outside, even though I wouldn't disrupt the classroom.
Okay, I think that, the next thing is that the board member should have free access to the building and facility, except if it involves,
Disruption of class.
I won't use the verb intruding, but it seems to be, what would be a better verb than intruding? But in order to have access to classes in session, the board,
I just don't think that, why are we including that? That's a purpose to look at that.
I wouldn't want you, in the classrooms without the principal or.
yeah, I wouldn't either, I wouldn't either.
Myself,
Well, but I don't think that it should be restricted. If you're going in there to observe a classroom, you're gonna check in, let them know what you're there for. That's one of the
But it's
purposes.
a further degree of penetration is what this is. I mean, the classroom, is,
I would have concerns of dropping in the classrooms.
Sure, but either way, this is all a responsible thing, and your access can be taken away by, board action as well too, if you get any complaints and you're doing things like that. I think this is all a common sense and a very respectful.
what is,
Yeah,
what's the noun, what's the subject matter?
Well, I'm just saying as far as, visiting a classroom, that's not something where you're just gonna be barging in and doing, you're gonna speak with the teacher, you're gonna. speak
You
with
are?
them. Yeah, you speak with the administrator, I would just imagine that's just common sense to do that.
Well, but that's why there's rules, because not everybody, as we know, exercises good common sense.
Sure, and then they can get it taken away as well.
No. This is like, these rules are meant to, lower anxiety on the part of board members and people who are anxious about board members.
I don't disagree with you there.
You disagree with me?
You're a teacher, I guess I kinda wanna hear, or you were, I'd like to know your ideas for what you would think as far as, I've spoken with other teachers. One of the teachers I spoke with, and as a matter of fact, his wife is also, another employee as well too, so he had said, when I have my planned, or you guys have planned observed visits or whatever, to where the principal will come in and observe you, they always ask me what happened. I don't care.
So this is
Let's make a plan.
my opinion.
So I don't wanna know.
I will tell,
Okay, go ahead.
my opinion. When I was a teacher, I encouraged as many administrators, observers, or people in my classroom at all times, because I want them to be fully aware of what I'm trying to teach, how I'm teaching, tell me if I'm doing a good job or not. I was taught to be a cooperative learner, I would take criticism very well. So I was never afraid of observations. I encouraged them. So that was my perspective. Teachers that I've talked to, say, come on in, I need your help, I need help. The kid, Johnny, you could use some help. So in my perspective, any teacher that would want an observer or a helper or anything would be open arms once you come in. However, that isn't always the case with everybody. So that was my perspective, that if they weren't hiding anything or they wanted help, they would just say, come on in. And I did this actually when I was substituting, back in, January, February. And, many teachers, you just come in and you sit down and there's other students or, future educators there observing, and the teacher would just continue on with the lesson, and then when there was a break in time, they'd say, hi, how are you? What can I do for you? And then you'd say, hey, I'm here to, help for Johnny, because I'm substituting for special ed today. And then they'd say, okay, sounds good, and when there was a break time, then you kind of come and you kind of facilitate any kind of questions or help, Johnny if you needed help. And that's many times, there would be many people coming in and out, and, competent educators, in my opinion, encourage more people people around as long as they weren't disruptive. If they were disruptive, get them out.
Yeah.
Just like a student.
Let me just
That's-
clarify the distinction.
Sure.
I think that's really good, and that shows that, you know, you wanna grow and you value, you know, people's perspectives and things like that. I think that's really good. But these are all people that you either knew
Nope.
or
Yeah, no,
you
no, no, no.
expected to be constructive or at least not disruptive.
Yep.
But I
Not
know,
disruptive.
I know,
In the
I
area
know
of-
from being a department chair, that, and of course it was, you know, it was university level, but there were like political crazies coming into lecture halls
Sure. So the disruptions are completely
to
negative.
either disrupt or to like, you know, try to like get information from, you know, try to get information on the, you know, pertaining to the professor in the presentation, that they could then like, you know, raise hell.
So I will say this, are you done? Can I speak?
Yep, I'm done.
I will say this publicly now because this is done and over with, but when I was on the campaign trail, I substituted at Lincoln High School, and I went down to, not a classroom, it's like the cafe area. And there was a district employee that, there was an argument between a man and a woman, and the employee, the student, and, the employee raised her voice at the student saying, you have to start behaving, he's running for school board, and he's gonna talk bad about what's going on. And I never mentioned that till today, right now. So that's the heart of the problem, that I'm not trying to disrupt anything, I'm trying to promote goodness and productive members of society, and with that statement, it only reaffirms that there wasn't trust in me or whatever, and that was the exact opposite of what I wanted. So, in the spirit of what we're trying to talk about, disruption, problem, should not be involved in classrooms if there's disruption, but for the betterment of understanding
Okay,
situations,
okay,
it should be in the classroom.
Yeah, I understand where you're
Because
coming from.
that's how you, that's
So-
where the road, you know.
I want you to tell me how you would word condition number 4.
The teachers themselves should have control of the class. You come in and you're making a disruption, I don't even care if it's me as a board member. I fully expect kind of her to toss me out of my ear, I ain't got a problem.
Exactly. So. in the
They're not
spirit-
gonna toss a board member.
You know, this.
Why don't we?
If you're
oh,
being
sorry.
disruptive, I don't care who.
Oh, if you're being disruptive.
So that's
of course,
where
I'd kick
I would
your
say
ass
it's
right
disruptive.
down
So the
the
wording
stairs.
should be disruptive.
But,
Where did that stop then?
Jim, sorry.
Yes.
My preference would be, because of how we're starting this and engaging this in terms of this transparency and exposure, I would start off maybe, a little bit more reserved here and say, that, visiting a classroom should be, to start off with, based on invitation or approval. I mean, you could, because what happens, they could be testing. You may unintentionally disrupt something. So I think what's happening is you're increasing exposure. Myself, I'm start just becoming uncomfortable with,
Dropping in unannounced.
I don't think you should be addressed. If you are gonna disrupt testing procedure, then you're a disruptor. And
Yeah, but-
should tell you, you know.
Personally, I really strongly support this, and I used to, but I had established a culture where I'd be walking through with donors, and our teachers were very familiar with what I was doing, and there was never, any problems. Again, I was controlling the environment a little bit because I understood, in terms of what I was doing.
Sure.
But there is risk associated with this, and I wouldn't want to discount that, in terms
Yeah,
of.
and I'd like to refrain from like causing a police state atmosphere on this sort of stuff, like, oh, the school board is here to stop, to spy.
I very much.
I mean, I
want
think there's a
you-
difference between a legitimate observation.
I very much want you to visit classrooms, and not necessarily where that's unannounced. I don't know that I want to promote that necessarily on your own. I mean, and I could be a lot busier, you wanna go visit some classrooms or whatever, and I might be telling the building principal that I'm, maybe stopping in at your school or whatever, but I
But
don't
Vince
want,
wants to-
we wanna build trust though too, and I strongly support this in the article I shared with you, said you need to do more of this.
Yeah.
So I am promoting
You can't
this
have a
as,
cake and eat it too. It's kinda like, yeah, so.
I'm just trying to be, a little cautious, I'm
Yeah.
here.
So.
Vince wants to see the real thing, but the thing is that.
My constituents want to see the real thing, so I'm just a placeholder. I was elected by
Well,
the people.
you're more than a placeholder.
I'm just doing I'm not doing this out of any motive, I'm doing this because there's a need and I'm here right now, and I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here because there's a need, so.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that germs behave differently if they're observed than if they're unobserved. So that the deal is that the presence of a school board member in a classroom, changes the climate.
Until you become a regular.
Wow, become a regular.
That's the whole point, is to let them see your face, Gary. No, it's not a wow, it's the whole point is, there are people out there that don't even know what their board members look like, and to me, that's sad.
Here's the equation, we can handle their high school diploma, but we can't see them in the classroom.
Come on.
I mean, what? So that's where, it was a little bit interesting to me that I handed out high school diplomas in June, but I'm supposed to, not
Shit.
be around.
We're the
I don't have a problem.
policymakers of the system, we're not the nitty gritty.
I don't have a problem with you putting in there, if your instruction, or if there's a reason why the teacher wouldn't want you in that class because of testing or whatever, whatnot, that they ask you not to. And, and that would be respected. I don't have a problem with that, but the whole point of having a key fob is because, like, one of those, on top of having access and sometimes when you can't get in, or somebody's busy and can't let us in as far as like the meetings and what that happened, but it's also like I said.
God, it's like Iran, you're not the religious police.
Excuse me, I didn't say anything
Come
about
on.
religion.
No, but I'm
All right,
using a
step down on
metaphor.
that subject, I don't wanna hear that again. What I'm
Oh.
saying is, it's the same thing as when I was, like what I told you before about at work, when the CEO says he's coming in.
I know that, I know
The
that.
whole point
I got
is, it's
that.
just one of those-
When Matt said it, I got it too.
Then I'd just rather, we don't even have to do this, Bob, but just put an automatic email to every single district employee and let them know, hey, I may be stopping you. That would be the same thing as well too.
No, I think what Jim is saying, we want this to be a positive thing.
I
We want this to
understand.
be a positive thing, we don't want this to be the spy thing.
Nobody's there to spy. Nobody's there to spy, we're here to help.
Yeah,
Like I said,
I'm just restraining, so I'm okay with, in the spirit of how to try to craft it, like, you could open it up to, like, teachers that are, willing to have, observe, to see the good things, it's like, I'm okay with that angle of it, which we should be promoting, there should be, so like, we can narrow it down to, like, schools or, timeframes if you want, but.
Well, I started off by saying.
Yeah.
We could have, if a school board member wishes to enter and observe a class in session,
They should let the teacher.
this should be cleared with the principal before, so that at least.
I just think we should let the teacher know that we wanna do that. Clearing it with the principal could be, hey, a board member wants to come and visit your class. Can we make sure that you got a good class coming up next week that they would want? No, I don't want any of that.
I know.
Make sure you clear it with the
I know.
teacher. That's fine, I have no problem clearing it with the teacher. Like, hey, I'd like to stop in and just see, but if you got something going on, it's no problem.
See, I understand the intention, the
Yeah.
intentions are meaningful, I really
So-
do, I don't wanna miscommunicate in terms of what the intentions are. I have many teachers in my districts that I've worked with, who invited board members to stop in any time. Okay, I recognize you can have a brand new teacher who would be really nervous.
Sure, yeah.
And with a
I
principal walking in,
understand.
that could be disruptive for that person. And so I'm just trying to, because I truly understand the sincerity and the benefits of.
So I guess, okay, here's just the side of it. If we stop right now with what the restrictions are, and then if there is a problem, obviously, then it would come up because of people not doing their due diligence, or being respectful, or being disruptive. So like, that's where like, you know, where do you, that's.
Just don't put it in and just let it happen by, you know.
Well, I understand the negative potentials, but I'm looking for the positive. So,
Right.
I mean, I can understand if we wanna try to restrain it a little bit, we can, but we shouldn't be looking for negatives, but we can try.
It's a positive.
Well, and that's why, you know, I really do have more evidence of teachers inviting board members in, you know, anytime, stop in. You know, I recognize not everybody's gonna have that same comfort level, and it's not that you're trying to catch something. I understand the intention.
But see, the teacher has a say about it, and I think, you know, just professional courtesy ought to be here somehow. But just unannounced, walking in.
No, you're gonna check in.
You're gonna check in at the office, you're not gonna check in with the teacher.
But if you're gonna go into the classroom, you're gonna check in with the teacher and let her know. You know, but if there's something going on where they got, you know, if it ends up where it's gonna be a disruption, because, hey, we got testing today, there's really not much tomorrow.
Well, then you should check with the teacher before.
I understand, yeah, right. I'm just gonna walk in the middle of the class. That's a disruption. Anytime that door opens, that's one of the things.
Oh, okay, I guess I didn't get that.
I mean, that.
I don't have a problem with that. I just don't think, as far as getting it cleared with the principal, there is a process of getting that cleared that's gonna take a day or two, and then that defeats the whole purpose of seeing classroom. But I definitely, nobody should be walking in the middle of the class. That's a disruption. That's one of the reasons why I like bells and things like that, because class starts, that's it, boom, door closes, you got an hour of teaching.
Good job.
You walk in the middle of the classroom, it's a disruption.
You're satisfying.
I understand that.
My need.
You should not be-
So be concerned, because you are,
You shouldn't disrupt a class in the middle of the class. or
Yeah,
anything
right,
like that.
right.
You should check in with the teacher beforehand, say, I'd like to sit in on this hour, if that's okay. You know, there's a respectful, positive, vibe that should be done with this, but it's not something where you should, you know, bust in, you know, in the middle of the classroom, and have a board member. No, that's not the whole point of this.
Okay, give me your line for line 4.
I don't have a line for it, Terry.
Yeah, I think if you
That
have
was
a line
almost right.
about saying if you're disruptive,
Sure.
we have to leave by the building principal.
Here's a question to you along those lines. What would happen if you ask the teacher, I'd like to sit into your classroom this next hour, and what happens if they say no?
Sure, there's gotta be a reasoning for it, right? Sure.
Well, what would you do if they said no? Because you're not an administrator.
Well, you have no
So
choice.
you would have to honor that, but then you just have a concern in terms of.
Of what they're
making
behind,
sure-
absolutely, but I definitely would have to leave that teacher who's in charge of that classroom, they have the ultimate, authority in that classroom. So, yeah, if I walk in and say, hey, do you mind if I sit in on this, and they said, no, I don't want you here, I'd have to turn.
Or they
them
might
off.
say something that gives you a reason to say, I understand.
Sure, but that's the thing, is I would have to, but then I would go through the appropriate commands and say, hey, they wouldn't let me observe this class, Jim, would you?
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's ever any question.
Yeah.
Well,
If-
I
if
think
it-
that's what you're trying to get at right now, I agree with you.
But then you say like, well, if we do that, if we give the teacher, you know, forewarning, then we're not gonna see the real thing.
Right, I'm not
No,
talking
I
about
said
it.
before the class.
Before the
You're
class,
saying
before the
before
class, they're gonna teach, hey, this next hour, do you mind if I sit in the, there's no wrong with that, but once you start getting, hey, I gotta get cleared, or I gotta get, permission from the principal to do it, now we got time, it's gonna take a while, yeah, sure, why don't you come in tomorrow and we'll have a class set up for you. No, I don't want that. But if I do come in and I say, hey, you mind, and then they say no, I have no choice but to leave, I'm not any authority as an individual board member, I can turn around and walk out.
Okay.
Like,
But then they gotta deal with the superintendent at that point, I would best be bet, I'll be coming back to the board and the superintendent saying I went to go visit Mrs. So-and-so, and, she told me not to, that I can't come in that room. So,
There are.
not that I don't want to, but could you go sit in that room? Maybe I'll have to.
Well, I think this has gotta be a mutual relationship.
I agree.
You know?
That's the whole
I,
point.
you know, I
It's
can
respect.
see it, and I, you know, I like, you know, more in terms of what we're approaching this almost in a collaborative manner. and I just want to convey that there's complexity to our work. I mean, you could have teachers in lead roles, you know, where they're really assisting the principal sometimes in what they're doing. They're so experienced or whatever that they, and there's other situations where, you know, a principal might recognize that, you know, this teacher needs a lot of help. You know, and so the principal is working to develop somebody and would not want, you know, to disrupt the environment. And that's something she may not know because we don't share that. I mean, that's just that sensitivity of also that we have to have here, because the invitation in is really what you're saying. You're asking them, you get invited in.
Yeah.
You know, that's really possible, but there could be reasons why. You know, also, I mean, just that you have to be sensitive to, that you may not know.
Sure.
You know, but again, I wouldn't want to, and you clarified that, you know, to just go into a classroom like
You
this.
just don't think of blind as a professionally viable sort of way, right?
And I agree. Opening up the door in the middle while somebody's teaching is blind, and that's wrong.
You're talking about two different things. So he's saying in the middle of a lesson, you're saying without prior 24-hour notice.
No, that's not.
So that's why
we're trying to get away from it.
All right, I understand we're at a bit of a loggerhead here, but, what do you think, you know, well, I know the answer to that, but, I mean, I think, you know, teachers come with some kind of responsibilities and rights. And I think that having people who have authority just would not be pre-announced in any way.
So as a teacher, like I said, there's many times in the middle of class period, aides would be coming in and out, and then substitutes for those aides would be coming, so you wouldn't even know who the person was, you didn't have a private relationship with them, because there was a substitute for that aide that day, or for that special ed teacher, or for the assistant. I'm saying, like, the invitation is maybe how we could try to frame this in a more of a respectful manner. That this is not trying to move forward, so if there was,
Sure, no disruption.
yeah, I mean, so like, I guess, how can we achieve both things, you know, it's,
What are we trying to achieve from that?
what are we trying to achieve?
Yeah,
Trying to have,
the-
cooperative understanding of classroom, activities without having scripted, you know, visits. I mean, that's,
Right, and I'm not sure that having scripted visits, you know, deprives you of seeing, you know, seeing pretty much what you really need to see. I mean, this is kind of a gotcha approach to dealing with teachers, which just is like, honestly, having been a teacher yourself, and certainly me, I mean, I didn't give a shit. You know, if people wanted to come in and sit in the back row of my lecture hall, it was fine with me, because I knew if they mouthed off or, you know, jumped up and did a harangue, I could say, you know, get the hell out, and I'm big enough to make them.
and I get that, that's why, an educator that I found out is, you find somebody from your classroom, you put them to work, because you need more help, you always need more help. So
Okay.
I would put them to work, you know, I would ask that board member, hey,
I love that.
Can you help me do this? That's what that's where you're gonna get that, if you do that, if you have an educator invite you to the classroom, they're gonna ask.
Yeah,
you
if
to
they
help.
invite you to the classroom,
Right.
that's, they are the agents of their own fate there. Whereas they aren't when you just sort of arbitrarily decide, well, I've heard this about this teacher and I'm gonna just drop the hell in, and, you know.
Boy, the way you, see, this is the thing,
Oh,
we're trying to
come
get to the
on.
positive.
I'm not, you know, I'm
Terry,
not-
the whole point is that we're trying to make this a positive thing, and every single time
yeah.
it gets to you, you're twisting it to arbitrarily, I've heard this about this teacher, and I'm just gonna drop the hell in. No, never have you heard those words. I've only heard them coming out of your mouth and a few select other people, but it's never from one of us.
It's a narrative. But he's trying to be, forthright in all perspectives, and some people might look for the bad, some people look for the good, and it depends on what the situation is.
Well, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for the good.
Okay,
of
what are you
better-
looking for?
I'm trying to look for the good.
Alright, alright.
And
I think there has to be a relationship of trust in that situation. And I don't think just, sort of like giving a teacher a 10-minute warning, I'm coming in, is any way to establish a
Nobody said
relationship?
I'm coming in.
he said he would ask if he would come.
He would ask.
Before the class period.
That's what he, is what he said.
Now, that doesn't mean that doesn't become problematic, but if you're not, if that teacher is uncomfortable for whatever reason, that teacher.
All they have to do is say that, you know what, I'm really uncomfortable with the board member in my room. I can understand that, I'm sorry.
So that's the human side of it.
Right.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
human.
I'm opposed to just dropping in, unannounced or without, that's why I was saying invitation. You're asking for the invitation.
Maybe they say.
I would think quite often you're gonna say, you're more than welcome in. If you don't get invites in, drop it in.
I would think so too, yeah.
So again, this is unfortunately when it starts off being, but this could be unsettling. I mean, this is, something that, from not doing any of it, to all of a sudden, high visibility, this all is something we're not used to. But again, it was important for me in my last, or two school districts, back where I was trying to raise money, I was bringing donors in all the time. And everybody was just very comfortable that
Yeah.
I'm coming in. I mean, that would, but we had established a culture, everybody recognized the importance.
And they used to see you there all the time.
They used to see me there all the time, but see, that's what we established at the very beginning, and we just have to recognize we're talking about, things that are dramatically different than what you've done in the past.
Tell you how you get people more involved in the board, if you have them in schools.
I really think it should be something that people on the board strive to do, I mean.
I
doesn't have
think
to
it's
be all the
Well,
time.
I guess
At least
I'm
once a week.
old fashioned, but, there used to be norms on things like this, and professional courtesy used to be a fairly significant part of it. Like, you don't drop into a doctor's office, and say, well, can I come in and watch you, do your stuff, et cetera?
Not that, but, his boss might, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is you could stop into a doctor's office and say, hey, do you have time for me to be seen today? There's nothing wrong with asking, and if they don't, they let you know. Same thing with, that was your euphemism or whatever, your
Analogy,
yeah,
yeah.
analogy,
Yeah.
but, just stopping in and saying, hey, and if they don't, say, I'm not really comfortable with that, well, maybe
Yeah.
we could set something up, or we could talk about it, or later on, or whatever, but I don't, obviously, I'm not gonna come in and, man, it's being an adult.
Yeah, so I think to summarize, you can ask for, to observe the classroom at an appropriate time, and if the teacher feels that they're not comfortable, then you come back at a different time, or you ask for the teacher. I mean, that's the spirit of what we're trying to
Yeah, I
achieve.
think that's what Jim and I were saying.
I'm doing the same thing with teachers, I'm.
Yeah.
Invite me, when I'm getting this, I'm getting so many invites, right now, so,
So what I just said is how I would frame it.
Well, see, that's what I am, because I felt like I've taken enough time to know the board, and your intentions, I don't see that you're looking to catch somebody. Obviously, if we see things that bother us, if we see a fight in the hall, we're gonna be concerned, right?
Yeah,
Who wouldn't be,
that's-
right? I mean, but it's not that, but again, I do believe that the presence of board members in the schools, in the long run, is really beneficial. Because it's gonna help you do your job better.
Yeah,
I
well,
think it will be also
I just
that
think-
with a lot more invitation than there would be, it's just getting there. Honestly, from what I, have, but on the surface here, and depending on how people might view this or promote this,
Yeah, I mean, I can see a process saying, by you calling up and saying to the principal, I'd really like to observe, some classes, like a class in this, and a class in that, and a class in this. And could you communicate to the people that teach that, you know, of my interest in that? And at least like, you know, not just sort of show up and that, but, and then the principal can say, well, this teacher and this teacher and this teacher certainly would welcome you coming into the classroom. Would that be enough?
I just think that right now, we're talking about a fob access and that, and what we're talking about right now really doesn't have anything to do with fob access, because we could walk in and get buzzed in during school hours and then walk in to check in with you. I mean, we're.
Yeah, that's why, just your whole thing is why I voted against the fob.
But we should
You know.
we should stick with the policies from the fob. I know you're trying to make it look like it's a certain way, but it's not. Let's just stick to what we did.
No, I'm
We're gonna
not.
check in, and reasonable hours of use from 6 to 9 PM, is what we decided.
Okay, give me, you know.
You got 3 of them right there.
Give me what you want, you know, you can bring it up to the board.
We already did the 3. Make that 9151, whatever that is. 90. That's
Should
it.
I recommend that we assemble what we've got, schedule another meeting to review what it looks like?
Sure.
Continue any conversations and
Sure.
sleep on it?
I like that.
And then see how it looks when we have it in a draft form as a revision to the policy.
Yeah.
And then we can go from there and see how it fits after we mull it over a little bit more.
When would you like to do that?
I don't know, you know.
Look at your calendar and
Yeah,
see, and
and
put us
I'll
put us-
schedule something for 4:30.
Yeah.
And I think that would, help us move one step closer to looking at it. And I have Michael Morgan here, I don't know if you all know Michael Morgan, he's our safety coordinator. He and I head up our safety stuff, and, I had him here to talk about any, particulars that we have concerning safety, or how it would work and how it would, you know, he's my, another set of eyes and ears.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
here. Thank you.
yeah.
Mike, did you have anything with what we've talked about that would have us have to review anything in our normal standard operating procedures with, our SRP?
Absolutely. So one of my thoughts that comes to mind when you set those parameters for those hours, if you don't check in an office and we don't know you're there, and that building blows up, so we take the worst case scenario, the building blows up, I can't tell them that you were in the building.
Right.
And right now, I can do that remotely, Chris can do that remotely. If you go to an office and you check in during normal school hours, the secretaries in the office will put you in our Raptor system, it's an identification system. It checks you against sex offender registry in all 50 states, and then gives you a visitor ID that you then have with your photo on it. And at that point, you have a designation on where you're going to the classroom, Mrs. Smith, you're going down there, great. If we don't check in, so you say 6 o'clock, just think of this scenario for a minute. You come in at 6:15 in the morning, and Mrs. Jones is in her classroom. She doesn't know you from boo, but you're walking away from her. I don't expect Mrs. Jones to talk to you at all. As a matter of fact, I would hope she doesn't. And at that point, she's either gonna call 911, or she's gonna call a lockdown for that building. So it would behoove you to make sure that you have parameters set up that you are going, if you're walking the other direction, you can't see the lanyard. It would make sense to have some sort of parameters that you're in the system, in the building during that time frame.
If
So
it was,
that you know.
if it was that prior to that time frame, and you do use your Q fob to get entered, I use key entry, I use them RFID chips to get into my work now, comes in a log, right?
Right, but that doesn't help me at that moment because you're not in our Raptor system. The fob system is different than our visitor management system.
How do we get that, something easily accessed to, you know, that way you can look that up? You know what I mean? Cause you would actually know, you're just saying that you wouldn't you wouldn't have access to it right away, or you wouldn't wanna look it up right away, or maybe you wouldn't,
We
I don't
wouldn't
really
know.
know, but
We
it
wouldn't
wouldn't
know
come up
if
in a log system that we went through, right?
You wouldn't know, we wouldn't know that you left.
Right, because you don't scan to get out.
Right.
Right.
Right. And
So if I did come in at 6,
I could
for
see
whatever
what you-
reason, I don't
could see
know.
what door you went in.
you'd know that I went in there.
But we don't know anything
But then,
else.
right, but then when the secretary comes in at 7, I could always go in there and sign it, correct, and they could put me in rapture.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's clarified.
So the next piece to that is that we expect that our classroom doors are locked during the school day. So every classroom door should be locked, whether it's open or not is up to them. But we expect that that key is turned so that in an emergency, if we went into a lockdown and secure a hold, all they have to do is pull that door closed. Our teachers are becoming very vigilant with closing their doors. So now when you start talking disruption, every time somebody comes to the door to knock on the door, it's now a disruption, which is part of the reason that teachers kind of don't always want to close their doors because they are keeping them locked. So there's another sticking point for you to start to figure out how you're gonna deal with that, because now you're knocking on a door.
That's why we talked about earlier about prior to the class, opening it up
Right.
or knocking, or that's a disruption. I couldn't imagine you would want to do that. I wouldn't want anybody to do that. Like he said, that's a disruption.
Yeah, so here's the last thing that I would say regarding these two policies. To me, we've kind of gone down a road that I don't know we needed to go down, because I think everything that you're really trying to do is already in there. What we need to do is designate whether we're a visitor or not. And this is something I've leaned on for a while and haven't been successful in getting it changed. Here's my example. I have access to all buildings in all of our districts. So I can go to any fob entrance, I can go to any key entrance and get in there. If I show up at that building, and let's say I come in the back of Washington, and I'm walking through that building, I really technically am a visitor to that, even though I'm a staff member. Because until I go to the office and check in, I am a visitor to that building. Unless you are on the schedule for that building, master schedule, as teaching in that building on that day, you are a visitor. So Chris and I, for example, we can get into all buildings, but we are technically visitors. Jim walks into a building, he is a visitor. We expect our staff to check in the office if they're not on the master schedule for that building.
Yeah, I don't think we can.
So they're not doing that though.
Huh?
Maintenance isn't doing that.
No, I know, but I don't think we're,
But I understand where he's coming from.
sure, but I don't think we're saying anything different than what he said. No, he's kind of reaffirming exactly what we're talking about.
So in essence, what you have is already have everything you're trying to do right here. And if you look at 9150, everything what you're trying to do is already listed if you're really trying to do it. The question is the fob piece. So now it gives you access to 5, 6, 7, depending on the building. Lincoln probably has a lot more entrances that you can go in and then immediately walk to the office.
I agree with him on that. Perfect. That's true. We might be adding, like you said, we might be going down a route we don't even need to go on, it's already on there.
You really think that's true? You think that 9150 is it allows for?
I think if you read, and if you go down those sections, I call them paragraphs, but some of them are own sentences.
Yeah.
If you were to number that right now, there's 11 on 9150, there's 11 sections. The ones that would be critical to what you all are talking about would be 5, 8, 9, and 10. Now, you have stated, and I don't know where it went, I don't know where it exactly went with the whole checking in, but in that section, if you're a non-staff person, so again, you ask
Oh,
yourself.
non-staff access to student class.
If you're not if you're not considering yourself a staff member, as a board member, then you're technically a visitor to that building. So then we need to follow those pieces that are listed there. If you don't want to stop in and check in with the principal, as it states in 8, section 8, then that's where you were trying to
So,
go
yeah,
in.
that's where I think we should differentiate between.
I got it,
And,
I got it.
and visitor, that's what.
But it does say here, after consultation with a teacher whose classroom is being visited, that requires consultation, right?
I think those 3, 4 sections, 5, 8, 9, and 10, those would be the critical ones to decide if you can live with that. Then you need to clarify, are you a visitor to that building? Are you a staff member? Are you, what would be, if you're a board member, then you need to make an addendum or an appendix and designate what that looks like, because it would be different than what is in 5, 8, 9, and 10.
I think we're always visitors, and whether we enter into the back entrance or whatever, parking lot, doesn't matter, whatever, we should go in and check in. I mean, if it happens to be earlier than what they're there, then I think you should be, checking in the second of the secretary, or not the second, but when you notice, hey, it's 7 o'clock, the secretary, I should go sign in, so I can get in that rapture system, and do whatever. I just don't see why you do that early to me. But yeah, I don't have a problem with everything you said.
Yeah, I think that the board should designate it not as a visitor.
Exactly.
That's what
I
I think.
That can be discussed.
I think
It's
you
defined by
have,
this
I think you
policy.
have a distinct, classification, and that's the board member.
Separate.
A board member who's responsible for administrator is responsible for staff.
Yep, so I think there needs to be a distinction between a board member and a visitor.
I can agree with
That
that.
doesn't mean that there aren't protocols.
There's protocols, but they are not under visitor protocol. They can abide by the visitor protocols, but I think there should be a distinction.
Okay. I can agree with that too.
So that's where he said we should have an addendum
Sure.
on this.
That clarifies what a board member is, that works within 9150 anyway, right?
It's declaring that the board member isn't a visitor, it's a board member. There's only 7 of them.
So then you'll be addressing 5, 8, 9, and 10 specifically if you do that. That's what you need to do. And again, just look at those sections, I don't know how yours are printed off.
Yeah, what's 5? 5
So
starts
5
with,
would be the
five, what's 5 start with?
Non-staff access is.
The individual board member?
That's the,
That's 8.
That's 8.
The board
So
member,
you could add a new policy that rather than having visitor, is board,
Yeah.
and have this replicated with clarification, that
Right,
would be neat.
exactly.
Okay.
And that's where
Not even looking at it as a addendum, you just have a different policy, you classify, board members as board members, not staff, not visitor, but board, with all the same information relative to any changes that you would make it more like staff, but not in the administrative role, and I don't know that anybody's putting themselves in that role.
Oh, yeah, nobody is. I mean, it's,
Clearly, it's to, again, you framed it at the beginning in terms of trying to have that preface.
yeah.
It's just now, how do you do this, as a separate policy or as an addendum, maybe the cleanest is just a separate policy. So they're not seen as a visitor or as a staff, but as a board member. And it would have the protocols that ensure a safe and orderly learning environment.
So just defining it, what we just did.
Yeah, right.
So then, yeah, it's a different classification.
I mean,
That's why I suggested we eliminate, 8, 9, 10,
We eliminate
11.
things that need to be board.
Yeah, so eliminate the stuff that
We
pertains to the
eliminate
board.
that stuff, and then we have to implement.
And then this stuff,
This becomes the.
this
and
becomes the
I would
replacement.
I would also want to just make sure, that I run it by legal counsel, just to make sure that there aren't any implications.
Oh, sure.
There are things, for example, like, teacher assigns grades, you can't just undo a grade, there are certain things that I just wanna make sure we're not missing anything that legally, is stated. It's just, and I don't think that that's a difficult thing to do.
Are we good? Can I jump into one other thing about files? Are we okay?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I'm
I'm the chair.
I'm losing time here.
Go ahead.
Can we address the outstanding access that we have to our buildings, at this moment as well with files? I think that would be.
What is that? What's that?
Means we have access to buildings that haven't been turned off or or do we have it all figured out, or good? This would be a good opportunity to.
Oh, man, I don't understand what you're doing.
I guess I don't either, I'm trying to figure it out.
Trying to say, the access that we have to our buildings right now, are we in a good position to eliminate any outstanding fobs that are on? There was
You
an
mean that
instance.
there's lost files?
Yeah, or there was an instance
Oh,
where the
yeah,
student had
yeah,
access
yeah.
to the facilities, and then,
We need to do that as
You know,
policy too.
so this would be the time that we could address that, we need to, not have outstanding fobs that are on yet for non-staff.
So we're talking about almost like somebody got a hold of the master keys and all of a sudden you gotta rekey the whole building. You're kind of trying to identify, do we have misplaced fobs or?
I get what you're saying now. Well, I can tell you that the secretary, we've got a very good communication system between the secretaries who administer the fobs at their building. And I hold the master list. And, when an employee leaves, IT turns them off in the Active Directory, which is like the electronic fingerprint with all their electronic credentials and their email. When that goes down, so does their access to the building. And then I rename that fob, I turn it off so that the secretary can reassign it to someone else. You know, and our new fob system is 1 year old. So before this year, yeah, I did have concerns because our fob software was very archaic. I have way better confidence now because a year ago we took just the current employees, assigned them the buildings, and then started from scratch. So, is it perfect? Probably not, but it's way better than it was before. I look for unnamed fobs and I turn them off right away.
Is there rules for, that they sign maybe, or when they receive them, saying what to do if it's lost or misplaced, or what could happen, that type of stuff?
We don't have a fob policy like that, that's very specific. I think it's just under a key, and I'll be honest, I haven't looked at policies, if there's, what it says if we have one for keys, I don't know if we have one that specific.
That's one for me.
We really should probably, not just for us, but just for everybody, I think as a safety measure is something that we should be concentrating on now anyway with the current state of affairs in this country, is that, we have something set forth as, you know, solid, what to do if you lose it, or if it's misplaced even.
Well, I can tell you just by natural logistics, even though I set aside the formality of policy, which I think is important, a teacher doesn't have a fob, they can't get in the building. So they'll get in the building and talk to the secretary and say, I need another fob. And they'll say, what happened to your old one? And they can deactivate it and we can put it as lost, stolen,
Sure.
or inactive. So
What if they lost it at the beginning of the spring break and they didn't tell anybody for the next week and a half? I wouldn't want that.
well, you know, we can certainly tighten up the language, but
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, and I know that the staff are very conscientious because they don't get a physical metal key to get in the building. The only thing they have access to the building is the electronic key fob. That's their lifeblood. So, I mean, I have had one person say, I lost it trout fishing up near Boulder Junction. I said, all right, well, that's fine, I'm gonna turn it off, and it doesn't say MPSD. And I can see when someone uses a fob that's not ours, it will, if I run a report, I have other things to do than that, but I do have the ability if we needed to do that, so.
What I was getting at is policy that backs up that, you know,
Sure.
the fobs need to be turned off, you know, after they're, you know, or if they're lost, you turn them off. I know that's mundane, but.
Yeah, we do that as a matter of course, but not as a matter of a policy, so, I would say let's keep the two separate, because I don't wanna be leaguer or draw out more time with the board action of fobs. And that will give me some time to look at some policies that other school districts use for their, you know, and see what we have, compare it, and then I can share that with you, you know, at a board meeting or at our committee meeting in the future to share with what we've got, and then we can see where we're at.
That sounds good.
I do have some urgency though, obviously, for the protection of our schools and the facilities, so.
Yeah.
So motion to adjourn?
Well, you wanted to add one more thing.
Okay.
I didn't want to, because I knew this would go long.
All right.
But that's okay. I don't think this is gonna go very long, but the property located at South Eighth in Columbus.
Oh, right. Oh, thank you, Mike.
So,
Thank you, Chris.
so the
Yeah.
only bit of trivia that I can give you is that this landowner.
Edward Barton, yeah.
That
Or
this
Edward
landowner
Barton, yeah.
did ask the board, and we did bring it to the committee and to the board in 2018. It was addressed and it was passed on. That it respectfully declined or not not,
So the
we're
board has
interested.
already acted on this.
The board acted on this in 2018.
Same individual?
Yes,
Yeah.
same property. So that's the history that I can share with you is,
What's the question again?
they wanted to buy the piece of property that we own.
On the corner of South Eighth and Columbus.
Yeah.
And what do we,
It's an empty
What do
lot.
we use it for?
No, it's
we don't
vacant
use it
lot.
for anything. There used to be a store there, which became a problem
Okay.
and got ripped down, and the school system bought the store, ripped it down, and made a vacant lot of it.
So I'm just doing my due diligence, homeowner, private citizens contacted me and said, hey, there's a vacant lot next to me, I tried to purchase it, and the board obviously said no, I think, and now I'm bringing it to the agenda, say, hey, can we figure out what's going on, what's the status? Chris just told us that, is there any reasoning, or was it just respectfully declined?
The guy wants to put up a fence.
Yeah.
The guy wants to put up a
honestly
fence,
don't
which
remember they
would
just said, no, we're not
make it a
interested,
blind intersection.
Well, there are codes with fences up on corners, so I don't,
Right.
I didn't hear about that, I don't know anything about that, so I heard, all I heard was maybe he wanted to, build a garage or something, that's what I heard, but I don't know. I'm not friends with him, or I don't know him at all, I was just trying to do my,
Sure.
civic duty to
Sure.
get back to the person. And, so here we are now, so there's a vacant lot on the corner by Lincoln High School.
Yeah.
It's been vacant, there used to be a store there, obviously there was probably problems at one point.
Right.
Because it's so close to the school, it's kind of by MPU in the corner, I think.
Right.
It's just grass right now, the school district cuts it, and the adjacent homeowner would like to purchase that lot. I don't know the size of it, but I wanted to make sure that, it was brought up, and we're talking about, hey, is that valuable to the district? Is there something that we look forward to moving there, or is it a cumbrance to us, or what should we, because we're charged with property, as board members.
Right.
As the board, so
Right.
if that person wanted to purchase that land from the school district, the board would have to say yes or no. So,
That's right.
just bring it to our attention, and,
Chris, what is our perspective relative to just understanding our footprint that,
It's, rather unremarkable.
Yeah.
There's no burden,
It's nothing.
there's not a lot of burden, there's very little sidewalk that we, clear in the snow, very little grounds that we mow.
the benefits for retaining it or the risk of losing it?
That I really don't know that I know either pro or con.
Could you look at that more to determine in terms of, from a facilities vantage point, why we might consider that advantageous to keep or no problem to consider a sale? And again, I don't, typically property is valuable and there's reasons why you would keep it.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's unique situations here where it doesn't matter to us.
We have these little participles
Yeah.
throughout the community that we keep, and from time to time, with the Fleetwood property, people wanted to buy a 2-acre lot, and we said no.
What is the size of the lot?
This one here, I have no idea.
I
It's
think
small.
Yeah, very small.
Yeah,
It's
small.
50 by 50.
So I think.
You might be able to
I
put a
think it would
garage
be
on.
advantageous for Chris to look at that and.
Very much
just-
so.
Just give a recommendation back from a facilities point of view,
That's what I
just in
would do.
terms of.
I like that idea, if we could just get some sort of more information to, would it benefit us or would it not?
I mean, sometimes you have a right where, under legal things, if you're thinking you're gonna have to expand, where you could actually acquire property. I don't know of anything like that could fit into here or anything of that nature. So I would be using in terms of, from what we know of our facilities, what potentially might, be considered into the future. We have a sense from maintaining our facilities in terms of what may or may not be valuable.
Right, what I know
Given the
from,
board.
what I know from the last time when he asked to buy it, is that his intention was to put up the fence in that corner.
Aesthetics and everything else can be, all
And-
that can be done,
And,
Plus or minus.
that would then be problematic, there's quite a bit of traffic there on Columbus and
Yeah.
South Eighth.
See, so there could
And
be
it
reasons
wouldn't-
why you wouldn't, you know,
It
right
would be
now.
a
There's
blind-
city ordinances with
it would be a blind
fences and
corner.
right of ways, so
It's
it
still-
would have to pertain to the ordinance, so.
Still
Yeah,
a
you can't block a.
No, it has to be under 4 feet, so then
Yeah, there's a certain amount
75
of.
feet from the corner.
Well, I don't know,
Center of the road.
I'd be in favor of having, you know, just,
I would like the evaluation from our
Yeah,
director
yeah,
and report
okay.
back to the board members.
that's a
That's
motion.
what I
Is there a second to that motion?
I second that.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, take a vote, aye?
Aye.
In favor? Aye, okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Evaluate the benefit.
And liability.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you think? I mean.
And then report back to us.
That's good, yeah.
Meeting.
Then we have some substance to talk about.
Talk to the guy and ask him, what do you plan on doing? Instead of hearsay, what do you wanna do? I would.
Yeah.
What's your intention?
Yeah,